Today I'm going to explain a romance slice-of-life anime called My Dress-Up Darling. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. When Gojo Wakana saw Hina doll for the first time, the little boy was in awe. He thought it to be the most beautiful thing in the world. His grandfather made the Hina doll and at his encouragement, Wakana tried to make his own. But while he was painting a doll's face, his friend called out to him, disgusted by his actions. Why does a boy like Hina dolls when dolls are for girls? He was so creeped out that he didn't want to be friends with him anymore. The girls stormed out, leaving Wakana alone with nothing but the thought that his passion, his most beloved hobby, was a secret he had to keep, as if it were a dirty shame. Still, that incident did not deter him from his love for Hina dolls. As a high school student, he still continued his hobby, but at the moment he can only do their clothes well. He has yet to master the art of making their head and faces. One morning, while having breakfast, Wakana's grandpa asks him whether he has friends at school. He noticed that throughout grade and middle school, Wakana spent all his free time with his dolls. Wakana doesn't want to worry him, so he says that he has friends. They're just busy with club activities so their schedules don't coincide. Sadly, this is far from the truth. Wakana hasn't made a single friend in school. He thinks this is because his dream is to become a kashirashi, a craftsman who makes traditional Hina dolls. Since his hobbies revolve around honing his craft, appreciating his work, and well, talking to said work, he feels like he has nothing to talk about with other people. He also has an awkward disposition that makes everyone feel uneasy around him. Nakana spends his break time in class sitting alone, isolated from people. His old friend clearly did the number on his self-esteem, all because he was enjoying his hobby, one that didn't affect her in the slightest. Suddenly, his classmate, Kitagawa Marine, comes flying in his direction, her head hitting the edge of his table. After getting up, she apologizes to the Wakana, and when she sees the smudge of ink in his arm, she grabs it, asking if he's okay. The boy lets out a death rattle too, stunned by their sudden interaction. But he soon manages to steam that he's fine. With that, Marine flashes him a smile and leaves him to talk to her friends, alone again. Wakana observes Marine from afar and inwardly describes her as a cheerful girl who has a lot of friends, and is always the center of attention. To him, she lives a completely different world. Then he hears her telling her friends about an incident from yesterday. She had a hair modeling gig, and there a guy who was trying to head on her started a conversation with her. They making fun of her anime keychain. He called her a total nerd and said that the keychain was lame. Pissed Marine coldly told the guy that the only lame there was him, though he was hot. She hated jerks like him and walked away without looking back. Her friends thought it was a waste for her to let the hot guy go, but Marine wasn't having it. She doesn't care about how good he looks. He clearly knew that the teaching was something she liked before he opened his mouth. He can't just go around making fun of things people clearly like. She says, which strikes a chord with the Wakana. He laments that she really does live a different world from him, one where she's accepted for who she is. It must be really comfortable in that world. That day after school, Wakana agrees to do the cleaning all by himself. When his classmates leave, he thinks about how cleaning alone will be tough, but it's better than failing to have a proper conversation with them and making things awkward. Soon enough, Marine shows up since she's on cleaning duty too. Wakana's surprised that she's going to clean, but says nothing about it when they're tidying up. She asks where the others are, and he currently responds that everyone went home already. He tries to make excuses for them, but Marine hits the nail on the head when she asks if they're just taking advantage of him. That stops Wakana in his tracks. Perhaps he's already known this all along, but saying it out loud felt even sadder. I guess so, he responds with a smile, making Marine get angry on his behalf. She asks whether he minds it, and he truthfully answers that he does, but the other students told him he was reliable. So he guesses it's okay. Marine sharply tells him that he's not being reliable, he's being used. He should stand up for himself more and speak up about how he's feeling for his own sake. Days after that brief but meaningful interaction, "We're gonna still ponders out," Marina told him. She saw right through him and his tendency to suppress his feelings. Perhaps if he takes her advice, his school life will be better. When the sewing machine tone broke down, Wakana decided to use the sewing room at school, since the school doesn't have an arts and crafts club. "You sure that no one's going to barge in?" Wrong. While he's blushingly talking to his darling little doll, Marine suddenly slides the door open. Panicking, he approaches Marine only to stumble. The Hina doll almost falls through the ground, but Wakana quickly dives in with an action star's vigor and catches it. He talks to his beloved doll, asking her if she's okay while Marine is watching him. Oh, boy, but instead of being creeped out, Marine is very amazed by his abilities. She excitedly asks where he learned to sew, and he awkwardly answers that his family runs Hina doll shop. She gets a better look at his Hina doll and she compliments it, saying that she's a total hobby. Her reaction stuns Wakana, and it starts feeling happy as for the first time someone's complimenting the thing that he loves. When Marine asks if he made it, he says that his grandfather did, since he can only make clothes at the moment. This sparks an idea in Marine, and without warning she suddenly addresses, makes pure, innocent, and confused Wakana look away. She soon instructs him to face her again, and when he does, he sees her wearing a poorly made outfit. Marie shyly asks him what he thinks of the dress she made herself and shows him her reference. Wakana is stunned, flabbergasted, appalled. Her dress looks way different from a reference. This awakens the beast within Wakana, and the beast happens to be a passionate critic. "No one can suck this much, even if they tried," he announced his way too earnestly. Examining the dress she made, he finds that the material has no lining, no reverse stitching, no bobbin thread. Wakana Connor pulled out of his Project Runway trance when he sees how close Marina's to tears. So he composes himself, bows, and begs for death and forgiveness. She immediately assures him that she isn't mad, before explaining that she made that outfit because she wants the cosplay. For her, cosplay allows people to express just how much they love their favorite characters. It's basically the ultimate form of love. With that, she gathers the courage to beg Wakana to make a cosplay outfit for her. She loves the character Shizuku Tan so much that she wants to become her. After recalling everything she said that struck him well, Wakana solemnly agrees and promises to do everything he can. Marine is so happy that she's practically brought to tears, since Wakana doesn't know anything about Shizuku Tan or St. Slippery's Academy for Girls, the young ladies of the Humiliation Club, Debauched Miracle Life 2. The game where Shizuka Tan's from Marine gives him a rundown. "Are you okay, Mr. Voice Actor? Slippery Game 2 isn't it all game with a typical harem plot? Oh, boy. Boy goes to all-girls school. Boy gets milkers, or as you know the drill. Wakana doesn't though, so he's completely lost. Humiliation clubs. Arrow slaves who, according to Marin, are doing it for love. Wakana is just lost." He points out how pervy the game is, in that he didn't know that girls like those kinds of games. To this, Marine asks him if being a girl or a boy matters when you really like something. Her words make him recall that one memory with his childhood friend. So with more enthusiasm he responds absolutely not. Thus they have sealed the deal. To get Wakana started, she gives him a beginner's guide to cosplay manual. They agreed to take her measurements on Monday, but come next day, we're gonna surprise to have Marine visiting him with cheesecake. She found out where he lived by searching Gojo Hina dolls on the internet. And she's there because she can't wait until Monday to become Shizuka Tan. With that, she invites herself in, and the shy and timid Wakana can do nothing but go along with it. Inside Wakana's room, Marine admires his doll, making supplies, before asking him to take her measurements. Nervous and hesitant, he suggests having someone else do it instead, since she has to be in her underwear for him to take her precise measurements. This isn't a problem for Marine, as she unbuttons her shirt and reveals that she's wearing a swimsuit underneath. She already foresaw Wakana being iffy about the whole thing, so she planned ahead and wore a swimsuit instead. "Oh, yeah, No ma'am, that definitely doesn't help. Despite his apprehension, Wakana starts measuring the top of her head. She keeps her eyes closed to make things easier for him, but while he's measuring her, she teases him by opening her eyes for a bit. Startles Wakana, who swiftly gets away from her and accidentally bangs his head on the wall. This worries Marine. But thankfully he's fine, so they continue. Next to be measured are Marine's shoulders. Wakana has her face the other way so he'll be less distracted. That's well and good, but he's soon faced with the most formidable opponent, her buttocks. He's been blushing the whole time and it doesn't seem like he's gonna stop anytime soon. He asks her whether she's embarrassed at all, but she replies that she's doing it for Shizuka-tan, so it is necessary to follow what is stated in the guidebook. This calms him down. Wakana puts his game face on and starts measuring her properly at this time. The measuring finally goes smoothly, until Marine asks her to have her feet measured. Wakana suggests that she sits on a chair, but she's perfectly comfortable sitting on the futon folded in the corner of the room. He sleeps on this futon, so he gets flustered to have a girl sitting on it. Sends Marine's insistent on staying there. He measures her feet from his futon. The challenge isn't over yet though. It's time to cue the boss music, for Wakana must now measure her bust. She meekly asks if she can measure it herself, but she gets a different result every time, so nobody else but him should do it. Hoo boy. Wakana eventually yields and he looks like he's about to have aneurysm from having her mammalian perturbed dances too close to him. Next up, his burst point, which Wakana is very determined not to measure. After all, how is he supposed to know where her nips are? After teasing him a bit, Marine concedes and measures her bust point herself, and to anyone who's curious about it,
it's 20 centimeters. You're welcome.
Now it's time for the inseam. Wakana is a little done with himself at that point and resents how he keeps getting flustered, but he doesn't mind measuring her inseam too much, since he at least won't be looking at her face. This time, though, it's Marine who gets flustered. When his hands get too close to her crotch and when Wakana notices, he immediately turns the AC on, thinking that she's just feeling hot. After everything has been done, he asks for some references, so she happily gives him copies of Slippery Girls 1 and 2. That night he religiously plays the game for research, if you know what I mean. Literally though, he's watching it for research and looks completely serious the entire time. His grandpa happens to see him playing it and Wakana casually greets him to the backdrop of moaning 2D girls. A sheepish Mr. Gojo just chalks it down to him being a teenager. One night, Wakana has a weird dream about Marine. She's wearing the dress while acting in character. Marine calls him master and asks him to look at her naughty bits.
Oh, how the angels have fallen.
That morning at school, he asks himself how he's supposed to face her after the cheerful dream. The moment he sees Marine, he apologizes for it, even though he doesn't tell her what it's about, leaving Marine to stand there confused. A couple students see the two of them talking and they start whispering among themselves, wondering whether or not they're dating. Then they conclude that there's no way she'd go out with them. The whisperers affect Wakana, so he starts avoiding Marine. Whenever she tries to approach him, he always runs off. That day after school, when Marine finally catches Wakana off guard, she invites him to go shopping with her. He notices that some students are seeing them together, so he politely declined her invitation. He runs off again and hides behind a corner, but she quickly catches him and tells him to speak up if he has a problem with her. Finally, Wakana admits that people will think they know each other if they see them talking, so it's probably better if they don't let others see them together. Marine doesn't have a problem with this, though, and insists that they're already friends. He brings up how some students are speculating that they're going out, and in turn Marine teases and asks, then why don't we? This makes him flustered. Despite this, she manages to convince him to go shopping with her that afternoon, at the specialty shop. There are all sorts of items dedicated to cosplay needs. Marine is choosing which fabric to use for her costume. Wakana's hands are a very detailed wide-angle view over costume. She's amazed by his attention to detail and ability to come up with such a guide in a short span of time. He also tells her the materials they'll need to complete the costume. Wakana has been giving his honest opinions and suggestions on which items they should buy, and Marine is grateful for that. She admits that she keeps on choosing the wrong things. And if not for him, she'll be in trouble. Now all that's left for them to buy are garters and stockings. Wakana nervously enters a lingerie shop with Marine, being the only guy in the shop. He's too self-conscious, but luckily his torment soon ends and they head over to a restaurant to eat, while the two of them are talking. Some people in line overhear the conversation about Slippery Girls. How far did you get in Slippery Girls? The part where he's up in front of the whole school at the morning assembly and couldn't stop spilling his man milk. The people who overheard this conversation between them are too dumbfounded. One even comments that high schoolers these days are terrifying. After a long day, Wakana and Marine are now on their way home. She shows him some photos of cosplayers, admiring them and saying that they're very pretty. Noticing his silence, she asks if he doesn't think that they're pretty, and he says that it's not it. Wakana explains that he's an only child and the first time he ever saw Hina doll was at his grandpa's place. When he saw one, he couldn't believe that such a beautiful thing existed in the world. He was so moved by it, that made him realize the word beautiful existed for things like that. Ever since then, beautiful has become associated with every special thing to him, so he can't say the word unless he absolutely feels it from his heart. Marine respects this and tells them that it's important to have things that one refuses to compromise on. They continue to walk home and Wakana insists that he pays share for the Roman they had earlier. She tells him there's no need, she's just really happy since it's not often that someone plays a game she recommends, and there Wakana was, with a bright and cheerful girl who lived a different world from him, because of his love for Hina dolls. He became so hell-bent on keeping his world small, but now it's because of that same love, that same passion that we're gonna found someone he could call his friend, one who accepts him for who he is.